Well, good morning. Welcome to today's reflection. This is the second one we've done. I'm gonna have to keep thinking of some good ideas for this. So, send me any of the tensions or worries or anything that it would be helpful for you to hear some kind of um, additional perspective on. As much as yesterday's was very much pretty news and update heavy, today's is going to be very much more focused on kind of some hope and encouragement for you as you go. But just first, really quick, I've got two quick updates for you or reminders for today. First, you probably saw last time in the newsletter that one of our own at the table, L. Tyler, is doing this amazing live stream video called Music and Movement, so that kids, particularly under 4 and under, can participate along with us as adults and family to burn some of that energy and have some fun in the middle of the morning. So that first one is going to happen at 10 a.m. today. So I encourage you to check that out. You can see that link on the newsletter or on our Facebook page. And I know she's intending to do these 1 to 2 times a week. So we'll keep you posted as time goes on. So that's the first thing. The second thing is just this. I have no doubt that with everything changing as quickly as it has, and with all the changes that we as a church have put out, it may be kind of overwhelming to remember everything. And so, toward that end, know that in the next day or two, we're going to be putting up a hope and hospitality page on the website, so that we're going to put all of these kind of regularly occurring live streams, videos, resources, what Andrew Strickenberg's doing with the community response team, all that information we're going to put in one place so that you can access it, pass it along to anybody else who needs it or may find it helpful. So that's coming on the website here soon. But just know that I can imagine you may be feeling a little bit overwhelmed for in the midst of this, and just how much information is kind of being thrown at you. So this morning, I feel like these will probably kind of go back and forth between hope and hospitality, and maybe it'll be both at one time. But this morning's, I really wanted to focus on hope, and hope is a funny thing. Um, I feel like in my own life, hope often feels trite, and part of the reason it feels trite is because we haven't done a good enough job or spent enough time looking at the reasons why we need hope. And so, in a kind of a counterintuitive way, I want to maybe trust that that is true for you as well, and that staring darkness in the face makes light even brighter. And so, just as in the midst of this circumstance, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately, just kind of as a pastor and as a person with my own stuff and trying to figure this out for myself and our own family. Um, I've been, well, let me just say this. I think this is going to get worse. Um, I think, and by all news accounts, not fear mongering, but realistic, data driven stuff, I think we can probably expect to settle into this new normal for longer than, definitely longer than a few weeks, but maybe even longer than a few months. The A friend of mine who is a pastor in the Bay Area, so he is experiencing right now the fact that everyone's being told there to shelter in place, and the conversation that's happening in the city and just in the Pacific Northwest region as a whole is such that they really don't think that this is going to peak until May or June. And there was a superintendent, I guess, in his school district that was saying schools may still actually be closed in the fall up there. I really hope I'm wrong. I really hope that that is not the case for us. But it seems to me wise, not fearful, to hold our expectations very loosely, and to expect very little in terms of this being more difficult. And and the kind of reflection for hope this morning that I want to focus on is just this idea that, and this is a really weird counterintuitive thing that may hopefully inspire hope for you, is that uh, our new normal right now, and for as long as we are here, is actually, spiritually speaking, our old reality just unseen. Our new normal is our old reality unseen. Um, One of my favorite books in the Bible is Ecclesiastes, and it's a weird book to be your favorite book of the Bible because it comes across as really pessimistic and cynical, right? It's a genre in the Old Testament called wisdom literature, and its whole point and it's written by King Solomon, so like one of Israel's greatest kings, and it examines life, quote, under the sun, and this phrase "under the sun" is repeated time and time again, and what it's saying is like life under the sun, or life the that is the observable world, that the light of the sun is touching, the things that we can actually see, not the spiritual reality hidden under it, just the physical reality, right? The things that we can see. That life under the sun, if all we can see is all we can see, and that's all that there is, then wow, this life is really empty, and it's really unsatisfying. So functionally what it's doing in a really kind of beautiful, artful way is a practical exploration and a thought experiment of life without God and what that is like in an ultimate sense, right? Um, and it uses these kinds of refrains: life under the sun, striving after the wind, vanity of vanities, to illustrate that point. And so I want to read Ecclesiastes chapter 2 verses 1 through 10, just to give you a tasting example of this. It says, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. In other words, King Solomon is saying, like, I want to find out if there is anything in an earthly sense that can actually satisfy and fill this internal void. I want to test to see if that's actually possible. And he goes on, he says, but behold, this also was vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven during the first few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had slaves who were born in my house. By the way, the slaves that is being talked about here in this passage is nothing like our definition of slavery in light of the chattel slavery that the Civil War is fought over. So don't get hung up on that. This is more of like a servant kind of tone here. So don't worry about that. He goes on. He says, I had also great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold, and the treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and many concubines, the delight of the sons of man. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also, my wisdom remained with me. In other words, he didn't get so caught up in this that he kind of lost who he was. He just tried to fill this hole in his heart. And whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasures in all my toil, and this was my reward for all my toil. That was a lot, right? But each verse is actually hitting on these different categories of life that can bring pleasure. In verse 2, it was jokes and humor and laughter, right? Verse 3, it was about alcohol and fine drink and spirits, which, y'all know how much I love a good whiskey, okay? So I can empathize, right? Verse 4 is about art. Verses 5 and 6 is about finding joy in nature and pleasure in nature, like we all do in Colorado. Verses 7 and 8 are about possessions. Verse 8 is about music and also includes sex in there. Affirmation is what verse 9 is all about. And then in verse 11, it hits with work. And I think this is particularly helpful for us because verse 11 and just work in general, like this is the means by which we provide for all these things. This is how we afford all these things. Like this part of Ecclesiastes is basically a description of the kind of elite suburbia that is Boulder County and what it means to live in Colorado, right? This is a description of how we can find these ultimate things, or how we can find an ultimate significance in these good things and find ourselves empty. Verse 11 says this: Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I had expended in doing it. And behold, all of this stuff that he just said, all was vanity and a striving after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. In other words, I think what we are experiencing now in this coronavirus pandemic and outbreak is we're finding out that we did not even know that this entire time we've basically been bowling with bumpers, right? We have had this comfort and control. We've had the consequences of finding ultimate significance in merely good things. And all of that has just been exposed as unsatisfying. The bumpers have been yanked away, and now we are just throwing nothing but gutter balls, right? Our wealth, our affluence, our privilege, our freedom, our schedules, our calendars, all of that, it turns out, is striving after the wind. It's chasing after something that's invisible and impossible to ever find and catch and hold in the palm of your hand. It's vanity. This word vanity means glory empty, right? A literal translation for it would be glory empty. It means it is lacking. It is utterly empty in ultimate weight, meaning, or significance. And this is where we find ourselves, in this place where we have no more distractions. Hotspots for the coronavirus are in the ski towns. We can't go skiing in the most amazing month and with pretty amazing amounts of snowfall, right? Our own workaholism is being stunted by being home with our kids and having to be responsible for our family and also to our neighbors in ways we've never had to think about. Like, self-fulfillment isn't just chasing after the wind anymore. It's actively stunted, constrained, and handcuffed to the wall. Like, we aren't allowed to chase after the wind anymore. And I want us to be prepared, I think, that if this hasn't happened already, you will find that a deep and potent anxiety and fear is going to flood into that gap, right? When we aren't able to chase after these things, when we aren't able to kind of keep finding that distraction in each of these different areas where we can find pleasure or try to satisfy this God-shaped hole in our hearts, we're going to find that fear, that a deep fear and anxiety is going to flood into this gap. And it's because every distraction, every vanity that just punts deep and legitimate needs and longings further down the road, we cannot indulge in that anymore. Our interior life that we have neglected and found other reasons to ignore is going to rear its head, and it's going to demand attention in that vacuum. Now, all these things, humor, sex, music, art, money, possessions, all of these things are and can be good things that God gives us to enjoy, but expecting them to satisfy ultimate longings is just going to leave us empty. And like an addict needing a more potent fix with every hit, we just keep doing the same thing and expecting different spiritual results, which is kind of a riff on Einstein's definition of insanity. And now that you're going cold turkey, now that we are all going cold turkey, we should expect to experience some spiritual withdrawal symptoms. I know that is like the opposite of hopeful at this point, but here's where the encouragement is. That there is a way to see those things and to experience that spiritual withdrawal in such a way that is incredibly hopeful. All of this is happening quite ironically during a time in the church calendar called Lent. If you're not familiar with Lent, this is a time that leads up to Easter. It's 40 days that traditionally Christians will fast from something in order to stoke their spiritual hunger. But there's kind of like a secular co-opting or hijacking of Lent that says that we give up something in order to become more spiritually strong or even more physically healthy. Like, we're trying to get healthy, and that's why we kind of go without something. But that's actually not what Lent is about. Lent is actually about not becoming more spiritually strong and healthy, but about feeling our weakness and our need. It's actually about stoking our hunger in order to reappreciate and reappropriate the goodness and love of God, so that when we come back and we do feast on the goodness and love of God, oh, it's so much more satisfying. And now all of us, whether we like it or not, like I didn't give up anything for Lent, at least not willingly, but now we are all in this place where we're giving up a hell of a lot more than we ever expected to for Lent. We're giving up like everything in so many ways. And there's an unexpected blessing in this, right? And I don't want to put a silver lining on it or give you trite hope, but this is how we understand this, right? It is now easier than ever, like in a way that is completely and unbelievably unprecedented. Like never before have we ever been forced to look at our own spiritual needs without distraction like we do now. It is harder than ever before to totally distract and avoid from looking at those things. And in that gap, in that need, we can find a spiritual sustenance that actually doesn't give a rip, and it doesn't depend on our economic station, our education level, nothing. We can find a satisfaction that none of these things that I just read about in Ecclesiastes can hope to deliver. In John chapter 6, verse 35, Jesus is talking to the disciples, and after feeding them with actual bread, they come back and they want more bread. They want to see Jesus feed them again. And as good as, eating is, he says to them, I am the bread of life, and whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst. This is not a promise that we will never hunger or never thirst in a earthly sense. What this is a promise that we need never go without ultimate satisfaction in Jesus. That our longings that are legitimate and good for meaning and purpose and being loved and cared for and cherished need never actually depend on those earthly things. That it only and utterly depends on Jesus and God's faithfulness to his people. And so that is an invitation, both for those of us who don't believe that Jesus is who he says he is, but also for those of us who do believe that in a maybe words of our mouth sense, but not in a daily existential sense. And this is the opportunity that is presenting itself right now. So like nothing else, this historical moment has the potential to reshape and reform all of our hearts. It has the potential to impart gospel hope in and for our neighbors who are experiencing this anxiety too. And it has this potential to turn our entire society away from the vanity, the vainglory, the glory empty promises of materialism and individualism and all kinds of other isms, right? I just encourage you, don't waste this. Ecclesiastes 4, verse 6 says, better is a handful of quietness than 2 hands full of toil and a striving after the wind. And so this is how we don't waste this. Last night, the Lent daily prayer devotional that I linked to in yesterday's newsletter, we in our household decided to do the morning readings and prayers during lunch and to do the evening prayers and readings during dinner. And so we printed it up and we started during dinner. And there was a prayer for the evening yesterday, written by Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman. And the prayer has this amazing refrain where it says, open unto me light for my darkness. Open unto me courage for my fear. Open unto me hope for my despair. And we went through it once, and it was amazing because we're sitting at the dinner table, and Ransom, who's 3, he started at the very end saying the refrain with us, open unto me. And he insisted and wanted to say the prayer again. So we did, of course, right? Because duh. And he had this joy of echoing with us this prayer, and we're all holding hands, and it's freaking adorable, right? But I had tears coming to my eyes because my son as because of this prompt and because of our own needs crowding to the surface of our hearts, our own needs, like not being able to distract from them with another whatever Netflix show that we're watching over dinner instead, right? Because we chose to do this, my son is seeing Jesus in a new way, even at the beautiful, ripe age of 3, right? He's a total teenager right now, but he found joy and satisfaction in that, and participate in it. So here's what I encourage you to do. Here's your kind of one thing to try and do today. Find 30 minutes in your day, in the morning if you can. If not, doesn't matter. Just find 30 minutes to reflect on one loss that you're experiencing today, right? One thing, one good thing that maybe you have looked for ultimate significance, or have sought ultimate satisfaction in, and because it's not available to you now from all of this stuff, I want you to reflect on that. Feel it. Don't run from it. Don't distract from it. Taste it. Mull it around. Take like hold out your hand even. Like look at it. Ask it, interrogate it. Ask, what is it? What is it that I'm hoping is going to satisfy me from this thing? Look it in your hand. Just spend a few minutes like even grieving the fact that this is not possible, even in the short term, never mind the long term, to offer the satisfaction that you thought it would, right? Do that. And then in the midst of that 30 minutes, ask God to show you how he can satisfy that good longing instead. Ask God, pray, speak to him verbally, not internally, not just silently, verbally. Ask him to show you how he is the bread of life, that is the actual ultimate significance and satisfaction for that good and valid hunger, right? And then after you've done that, be still. Be silent. Listen. See if he answers that question. And if he does, and even if he doesn't, thank him for how he is actually that to you. Thank him for the opportunity that this provides and affords us to slow down, to stop, and actually see it for the first time, maybe. Even if you've been in church your whole life, this may be the first time you actually have that deep, visceral experience of finding that Jesus is the bread of life, that he can help us to not spiritually hunger or thirst because of his goodness and beauty and truth. So that's all I got this morning. I love you guys. Praying for you. Please, if there's anything we can do for you as a church, and maybe you're actually you don't go to the table and you're watching this, but you're here in Boulder County or something, and there's something we can do for you. This is not just for people at the table. This is for you too. So if there's anything that we can do for you, we're here, and we will be, and we're listening. So let us know. Love you guys. Praying for you. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.